Welcome to this case study on cloud computing in the public sector, which is for example, in the educational institution. This case study is being presented by Rahul, Priyanka, and Rajalakshmi, and let's get started. Okay, the abstract of this case study. Cloud computing represents a potentially very effective solution to the current problems linked to the need to decrease the public budget expenditures. So basically, the solution is based on the same solution by multiple users, as well as on an opportunity of choosing a custom-made solution that would suit any office particular needs. So the aim of the contribution is to specify when to deploy cloud computing in public sector and to compare the situation in the Czech Republic and elsewhere. Okay, the case is okay. So deployment in a chosen public sector institution like a high school will be used to illustrate the situation. The used research methods include documents analysis and focusing on cloud computing public sector. For the case study was collected by the means of an in-depth interview with an IT expert. The data from the countries used cloud computing in the public sector shows that its deployment is meaningful, right? This conclusion is confirmed by the case study, which shows savings and benefits from this technology deployment. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So, the public sector, namely state administration and local governments in almost all European countries, address similar problems like how do you balance and what is needed and what is affordable with the budget we have. Uh, the research company Forrester have widened the above definition to include the IT tools on the supply side and service side principles on the demand side. Okay, the cloud computing is in fact a set of standardized IT capabilities like the services, software solutions, or infrastructure accessible via the internet through these self-service principles. So within the field of cloud computing, they can be distinguished by two types of service models, which is obvious, like the public and the private service model is a way of providing computing services to the end user. The basic characteristic of public cloud computing infrastructure accessibility to individual users or companies. The service provider must be an external entity. Um, the same applies to the data center from which the service is accessible. So, in relation to this model, the so-called virtual private cloud is sometimes mentioned. It is a solution that enables an organization to create a group of separate ICT tools in public space. So the private cloud, every model which makes services accessible to the only entity, one and only entity. Right. So the methodology, the used research models include document analysis, focusing on cloud computing in the public sector. Furthermore, data from the Eurostat database will be used for comparing the e-government situation in the European countries. Last but not least, a case study of cloud computing deployment in a chosen public sector institution. For example, a high school will be described. The data for the case study was collected during an in-depth interview with a representative of the school, along with the ID expert. So, cloud computing in the European countries, public administration and educational institution goes. Okay, so we could see it now. The use of computing in the sectors is not analyzed by statistical office as Eurostat. Overview is provided, for example, by the study of Gartner. This study describes the use in the public sector and in the education that are being completed in 2009 by Gartner analysts. About the IT trends, especially cloud computing, shows that it is being used more than in the areas of finance and business when compared to other sectors. These services are used most in Denmark, Great Britain, Sweden, where electronic public services are used by 60% of the citizens. The Czech Republic is with 43%, slightly below the European average. According to the government benchmark to 2012 survey, almost half of the European citizens, that is almost 46, almost close to 50, use the internet to approach public services, according to the EC 2012 report. The satisfaction with electronic public services is perceptibly lower than that of the online banking or online shopping. Okay, the study in a closed public sector subject. All right. In order to illustrate the utilization of cloud computing in public sector, an in-depth interview was conducted with the secondary school's IT administrator. Okay, profile of the school. The chosen subject is a secondary school, as I have told before. It consists of kindergarten for 40 preschool children and a secondary school where students can study grammar and academically oriented secondary school, not some fancy others. Um, Institutions are several vocational education courses, including those for beauticians, hairdressers, cabinet makers, shop fitters, graphical designers. There is also an academy for the third age and a university of the third age. The school uses three buildings and employs more than 30 people. The information for the case study was provided by the school's IT administrator. Okay. Um, General Karel Kladowski. Karel Kladowski. Reason for implementing cloud technology. The main motivation were costs and human resources, saving in relations to streamline administration. As the organization used three separate buildings several kilometers from one another, it is necessary to connect them in a simple way. Previous ID solutions did not solve the data synchronization among these three buildings. The organization considered whether to implement a standalone cloud solution to be able to implement such a solution for only for the data storage and backup. Nevertheless, it was also necessary to address email accounts, document sharing, and register system. The organization used all three services before they did not want to administer them on their own way anymore. It's like the technical parameters, the organization used Microsoft Office 365 service, and particular for electronic mail and data storage purposes, teaches share files with students and goes back or vice versa. This service is for educational institutions free of charge. It is used by 300 people in the organization. Furthermore, the register system is used as a cloud service. It is called iScholar, provided by the company Computer Mania. Okay, there is an annual fee for the service, which is counted based on the number of students the organization employees use the system to record attendance, marks, and apologies from the classes, as well as to print the report cards and so on. In 2010, the organization considered the transition to cloud services, and following year, it implemented them. After 3 years of using Microsoft 365, we witnessed an improvement of these services thanks to Microsoft's effort to keep the competition. Example, the Google Apps, keeping the Google Apps at the bay. Presently, the service offers more opportunities than ever before, says the organization's IT administrator. The cost of change management were zero. There was no need to invest in it, save human resources, as two employees had to put the transition into practice and train the other employees. It was how we implement. It was the organization's IT administrator who implemented the new system. The license for the iScholar register system was bought. The online environment was put into operation, and data from the baccalaureate system was transferred here. For 6 months, both the system were in operation in order to make the transition process smooth and to ensure the data backup for the organization. The transition to Microsoft Office 365 was faster. The preparation for the transition of the employees, data migration, all these things look only about 2 months. The data migration itself took only 2 days and went smoothly. Impacts on employees. Cloud service implementation had impact on all employees as all of them use email addresses and record information in the register system, that is attendance and much more. Students have email accounts too. The IT administrator provided 5 afternoon training courses. Further training was planned for any occasion when the Microsoft would update any service or issue a new one within the Microsoft Office 365. The employees welcomed cloud services as they had problems with the data synchronization among three buildings that they kept them separate apart. Separate. I mean, currently they can record anything and have access to their emails from anywhere, including their homes, which saves time. So far, nobody had problems with the new services. Benefits. The teachers spare much time as they can work from anywhere, and IT administrators there can do their other things as the system administration is easier and is not necessary to take care of the backups and configurations. A lot of routine activities are no longer needed. The number of IT employees was reduced from 4 to only 2, which means great decrease in employment. Okay, that's not for concern. The lower number of employees brought about financial savings. The organization saved money on the register systems too. The iScholar cloud service is cheaper than the previous system Baccalaureate. As the organization uses Microsoft 365 Office free of charge and the email communication was done from the employee's private account, users benefit from document sharing and the possibility to back up school materials. Therefore, it was not necessary to acquire a backup server and pay various licenses related to the infrastructure. Cloud services brought a lot of opportunities for the users and solved the problem with the data synchronization among the three buildings. So barriers and drawbacks. The school principal did not trust cloud services as the data should be stored in somebody else's server. Okay, that was a good point by the school principal. Having taken into account all the pros and cons, the organization came to conclusion that by transition to cloud, the safety would rather improve as the employees used to send even more registered data via the private emails and used email account belonging to various providers. So data therefore went through a lot of servers. The IT administrator stated that the CISIC legislation used to forbid storing data outside the CISIC Republic. This legal provision has been changed. Currently, the data cannot be stored outside the EU, Europe, as Microsoft has its data centers in Amsterdam and Dublin. This condition is met. The only drawback is the fact that internet connection is necessary. If it fails, it is impossible to record attendance and marks to access email or anything else. So this problem happens about 3 times a year and lasts up to several dozen minutes, which is tolerable. Final evaluation. The organization stated to use the cloud service Office 365 for educational organizations as it had cooperated with Microsoft for a long time. The service has been provided free of charge. The school management was informed about this opportunity by the school's IT administrator. The cloud service has brought about the overall improvement of the information technology. In particular, it streamlined the interconnection of the organization buildings and simplified data synchronization among them. The main benefit is saving the employees time to the fact that it is possible to work from anywhere and the IT administrators time due to the simplified system administration. So the other benefits are possibilities and savings of financial resources caused by lowering the number of employees, which results in unemployment. But the organization doesn't care. It's a benefit for them, and by the charge of both register system and email communication, their operation is free of charge. Moreover, it was not necessary to invest into a new hardware, and the most significant concern linked to the cloud computing implementation was about storing data in somebody else's servers. So, discussions from the points of the advantages provided by the cloud. There is a great advantage for educational public institutions staff to take them away the responsibility of the maintenance. Cloud provides instant global platforms, elimination of HW hardware software capabilities, and licenses. Reduced cost, simplifies scalability, adopting cloud network redundancy, eliminates disaster recovery risks, and its high costs. There can always be new tools and applications to improve IT features. There are a lot of course some disadvantages too. There are still problems and constraints with applications offerings, service legal agreements, more importantly, security issues. The case study about cloud computing utilization in education shows possibilities of time and financial savings and improvements in employees as well as students' flexibility. After overcoming the internal barriers and concerns about data safety, internet connection failures, and data migration, the new technology brings about a lot of benefits. The conclusion here, since 2009, the cloud computing technology has been getting to the foreground. A rapid growth in its utilization is expected from 2014 onwards. The European Union supports this technology by means of a strategy aiming to encourage the use of cloud computing and create unified rules for the utilization by European countries. Cloud computing utilization may help create a competitive advantage. Cloud computing adoption by public institutions might be supported by certain resources, Catacanco, by the Catacanco 2012 report. Okay, among others, it is necessary to define clear rules concerning the service provider's responsibilities, ensure data transferability among cloud service providers, have reliable and fast internet connection, ensure safety certification on the European level. So these are the references. We refer to this to like bring up our case study. So thanks a lot. Have a nice day.